Soldiers speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their futures. Soldiers speak out.
Not every battle ends when the fighting is done. Post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD as we know it, is something of an invisible epidemic. Among veterans returning from the current wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, PTSD and mild to traumatic brain injury, TBI, are often linked and their symptoms overlap. Today, hundreds of thousands of servicemen and women and recent military veterans have seen combat. Many have been shot at, seen their buddies killed, or witnessed death close up. And these type of events can lead to PTSD. The U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs estimates that PTSD afflicts almost 31% of Vietnam veterans, as many as 10% of Desert Storm veterans, 11% of veterans of the war in Afghanistan, I doubt that figure, 20% of Iraq war veterans. There's been 11 possible suicides alone that occurred in 2011 at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, and some of these soldiers completed multiple deployments. Even today, soldiers are being redeployed in Afghanistan, though they have documented PTSD and other untreated mental health issues. Welcome to the Veterans Hour, a monthly program produced by the media team of Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109 in Olympia, Washington. And this program will be exploring what a group of veterans is trying to do to help win significant improvement in the service members' ability to heal from trauma and injury. Our guest tonight is Josh Simpson, an Iraq Army veteran and graduate of Evergreen State College. He's a member of Iraq Veterans Against the War, more commonly known as IVAW, and a board member of Coffee Strong. Josh, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Operation Recovery, Joint Base Lewis-McChord, a campaign to stand up for service members' right to heal. Carefully chosen words, what does that mean?
Basically, what the campaign is aiming for is basically our goal in Iraq Veterans Against the War is to basically try to jumpstart a movement that will encourage soldiers to basically stand together in collective action for the right to heal. Basically, when you're in the military, you have certain rights. A lot of times the military doesn't tell you about those rights because they just don't want you to know. Because it actually works better for them to control soldiers if they don't know about the rights that they have, that they possess. So with this campaign, what we're trying to do is to get soldiers to stand together and basically demand that they're giving the proper treatment for their issues, and basically not sent to deployments over and over again, even if they're already suffering from PTSD. And then when they get back, they're actually treated with respect and given time to heal before just being kicked out of the military or basically being thrown on the streets again.
Or many times being redeployed.
Yeah.
Now, as you know, we volunteer. One of the outreaches for Veterans for Peace, Chapter 109, is to provide veterans benefit counseling at Coffee Strong on Fridays. And we are observing a number of people who are saying they are going to redeploy, or they have already redeployed, and they will show me their service medical records, which will show me 3, 4, 5 psychotropic meds that they're on, and clearly that they've been classified that they have PTSD, and yet they have orders, they know that they're being shipped out. Is this something that you've observed as well in the times that you've been at Coffee Strong as well as on base?
Yeah, it's something that we've definitely observed. For a while, especially during the surge in Afghanistan and the surge in Iraq, they were routinely sending soldiers back into combat over and over again with severe medical issues, especially issues with PTSD. And those drugs, I mean, they're really interesting because they also limit like a soldier's effectiveness. Basically, some of those have like really horrible side effects that basically make it so that it's really hard for soldiers to even focus, to concentrate, and actually like perform their jobs well. But another issue we kind of started to see where we're doing this outreach drive was we saw basically the military kind of trying to like lessen its force, and some of the first people they would kick out would be basically soldiers who had PTSD. And sometimes what they would do is they would send soldiers to like warrior transition battalion or whatever, and they would go there, and since they were damaged psychologically, they'd be unable to function in the job of a soldier. So they would mess up. They wouldn't make it to drill. They wouldn't make it to PT on time, formation, and they'd be punished for it.
Article 15.
Yeah. So basically, one of the most horrendous things that we saw when we were there wasn't even something that campaign originally was focused on. We were mostly focused on trying to prevent soldiers from being redeployed with PTSD. But then we started to see issues such as soldiers basically, being punished for having PTSD. People going to a unit that's supposed to help them, who are staff sergeants, leaving the unit as privates. You know what I mean? Sometimes soldiers being kicked out of the military, because they abused drugs to deal with PTSD or alcohol, and those individuals would be kicked out of the military without benefits, so they have basically, nowhere to go except just to the streets, for someone else to deal with.
Now, one of the commanding officers at Joint Base Lewis-McChord says we have 23 different mental health programs. What's broken that it doesn't work?
That's really tough. I mean, I can't even imagine the 23 mental health programs they have. Honestly, even if you ask the base about those programs, they won't even tell you. And but they'll say this too. But I feel like for them, kind of like a lot of things in the military, it's just a purely numbers game. You know what I mean? As far as when it comes to deploying soldiers back to war, it's all about numbers. They have to make sure that their units are full. They have enough people to go into combat. And I think saying you have 23 mental health programs sounds impressive, but it doesn't mean that any of those are actually effective. As far as what's broken, I think the way we look at PTSD in this society is kind of broken. When you look at kind of what these soldiers see in war, or what any troops see in war, a lot of these people that come back aren't really like crazy or messed up. If you go overseas and you see lots of just really horrendous shit, I don't know if I say shit, but you see lots of horrendous shit.
Those are stressors.
Yeah, that's stressful. And basically, if you come back and you feel guilty about it, you feel messed up about it, you don't feel right in your head or your heart, yeah, you're gonna have issues adapting. That doesn't mean there's something psychologically wrong with you. Actually, everything's working fine with you. It's just that there's something wrong with like.
And that's why some people even say we should not use the word disorder, because what they're experiencing is a natural consequence of what they've been asked to do.
Totally. At the same time, though, what they've been asked to do does make it harder for them to function in this society. And I think sometimes when it comes to PTSD, one of the things that you're gonna have issues with is that the military kind of wants to basically just heal you, have you forget all about it, become this insensitive, immoral machine, and just redeploy you again. But realistically, we're all human, and that's just not the way we're wired. And as far as when it comes to treating this, I think that they don't want to acknowledge that if this war was a really great cause, I don't think there'd be as many people coming back with issues like they have today.
Now, you served in Iraq.
Yeah,
you were an interrogator, so you saw a lot of things that were stressors as well.
Totally.
And some of the people that you were around that came back about the same time, they also had issues that were almost immediately apparent.
Yeah.
To whom would they go if they had those issues?
When I came back from Iraq, it's really interesting. And I think my story is very similar to a lot of other people's stories in the military as far as getting help and treatment goes. When I got back from Iraq, I definitely didn't feel right. I definitely felt really messed up, but I had security clearance, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it afterwards. So basically, because of that, I was pretty much told that if I went to get psychological help, I would lose my security clearance. I wouldn't be able to do my job. So I had to kind of keep it inside. And even after I got out of the military, no one really told me like where to go to get help. Eventually my work at Coffee Strong and actually helping other soldiers kind of showed me how, I can go get help for myself actually. It kind of opened a window for that. But if it wasn't really for my work at Coffee Strong, then I don't think I would even know where to go to get help. Kind of when it also comes back to PTSD, one thing I always like to include too, because I think sometimes people often forget about this, but there's PTSD experienced by soldiers who are overseas involved in these occupations, but the PTSD that soldiers go through is really pale to the PTSD that the people who live under occupations go through. The people of Iraq and Afghanistan, people of Palestine, like these people live in war zones their entire lives. We get to go there for a year, come back. That was my experience. Some people go there for a couple years, a couple deployments, to get to come back. They have something to look forward to. These people live really bleak existence in a permanent war zone. They don't have a real world to come back to. So while this campaign is focused on the suffering of soldiers, I think sometimes we do often forget that it's not just about soldiers, it's not just about Americans, but there's actually people who these occupations also affect in ways that are way beyond what we can understand. Because I can tell you one thing, as far as having issues goes, it's much better being an interrogator with issues than it is to be someone who is like locked up in prison for months. That person has issues that I can never probably relate to.
Well, several years back, I went to Ramallah in the West Bank, and I visited a school. And the administrator, to me, appeared to be in her 30s. And in leaving that school, I says, "What's one thing you would hope for?" And she said, "One night of peace for me and my children." And I looked at her and I realized she has never experienced what that even means.
Yeah.
So I understand that. Going back to Operation Recovery, you had a building phase of getting people together. Who all were the people that, I know you were here in the area, and you have participated in this, but who are all the other players in this?
A lot of the initial people that kind of set this off were a lot of the Iraq Veterans Against the War members who've been participating in the organization for the last couple of years, and also Coffee Strong in general. I think we kind of infrastructure. This one difference between our Operation Recovery outreach here versus Fort Hood is that in this area, we've been very self-sufficient. I've had quite a decent-sized group of veterans who are consistently doing working towards peace and anti-imperialism and things like that. Where I think a lot of other areas in the country, they have vets that kind of come like in and out, and don't always have that steady group of vets all the time. So we actually we basically had a lot of infrastructure already set up, but we knew that when we did this work that we're going to have to kind of change how we've done things. Because one of the things that Iraq Veterans Against the War have always said we wanted to do is we said we wanted to organize soldiers to end the war. Because one of our ideas was that if we can get soldiers to either to refuse to fight in these wars or basically cause enough issues in the military, these wars would end. Basically, if troops refuse to fight the wars or participate in the occupations, they'll just come to a screeching halt. That's always been one of our goals. And with this campaign, one of the ideas was basically if we make sure that no soldiers with PTSD are deployed, basically the military won't have enough soldiers to deploy to keep these current conflicts going. Because right now, such a small, tiny percentage of the U.S. population is actually involved in these conflicts that if we were basically to force more people into these conflicts, more people would actually have to go to it, or those people, that really small percentage that keeps going through all this trauma over and over again, if they basically got taken out of the equation, it would kind of dramatically change how this country viewed this war. Because these wars are acceptable to most people because they don't have to participate in them, because most of their family members don't have to participate in them. So kind of our idea was basically trying to shift the logic of kind of people's own acceptance of the war, which unfortunately right now, we're in the presidential debate season, and the wars are pretty much not even, the war in Afghanistan is not even talked about. I think it got like 2 minutes of play, all 3 debates.
Even on foreign policy.
Yeah. So I mean, it's really sad right now that we're right now we're involved in the longest war in the history of the United States, yet neither presidential candidate is willing to talk about it.
And it's amazing how many veterans we have coming into Coffee Strong when we ask, have you been deployed? And they'll say, well, a number of times.
Yeah.
And
which one?
Yeah, which one?
Yeah,
And they'll
totally.
say both Iraq and Afghanistan, and 2 times to Afghanistan and once to Iraq or so.
Totally.
And, you know, even if they don't say they have PTSD, those of us that are from the Vietnam era can almost say, yes, you do. You know,
Yeah.
you can't be in those type of deployments and not be affected by it. Well, you had an outreach.
Yeah.
Not everyone can make it onto a military reservation, a base. How did you go about getting the people in contact with the soldiers that you wanted to reach?
Usually we reach out to sympathetic soldiers who could get us onto base. We basically had them sign us onto base and get base passes. One thing that's really interesting about this is that most of this outreach we did was basically us randomly walking up to soldiers that we never met, we did not know. So, you know, most of the time I would just walk up to random soldiers and ask them if they knew anyone who was having issues with PTSD or being redeployed with injuries or things like that, or basically having issues with their health care. And I would get stories from soldiers, and sometimes I would get these soldiers' information and like talk to them more and maybe go to their house or have them come meet me at Coffee Strong, or sometimes I would give people, if they're getting out of the military, like say, oh, you show my friend Dennis Mills, he can help you with your benefits. Or if they're having issues with GI rights counseling, I would give them, saying, oh, we should go talk to this GI rights counselor, they could probably help you out with that. So usually we would plug them into the various services. And during that process, one thing that was really interesting is that, you know, it would come out that I was from Coffee Strong. And at first, you know, we first went out, it was kind of like, we're going to downplay the fact we were with Coffee Strong, with Iraq Veterans Against the War, because we thought that maybe that would like
Yeah, the banner was IVAW, we're all veterans from Iraq. Yeah.
So it would like cause tension. But one thing that was really interesting when I went out there is that I never got one negative comment from anyone when I told them I was from Coffee Strong. And actually, after a while, I would just instantly tell them I was from Coffee Strong. Like, it wouldn't even be like I would try to hide it at all. I would basically say, oh, my name's Josh, I'm from Coffee Strong. They'd be like, you're from Coffee Strong? Like, really impressed by that.
And for our viewing audience, Josh, why don't we tell them, if they haven't heard about Coffee Strong,
Yeah.
where is it and what's it all about?
Oh, so Coffee Strong is an anti-war GI coffee house that's located right outside the gates of Fort Lewis. It's basically attached to Subway. It's off the Berkeley Street exit, basically, which is across from the Madigan Gate.
Exit 122.
Yeah, 122 at JBLM. So we've been there for 4 years, some of our 4-year anniversary. I'm one of the founders with a couple of other individuals who are still involved. Originally started as a college project when I was an undergraduate at Evergreen. Still
And now you're a graduate of the grad program.
Yeah. Now I finished. I got my master's there, and it's still going. So, it's really good. But the thing that's really interesting about the Coffee Strong when I was talking to other soldiers was that it seems that when I told them I was from Coffee Strong, it was almost like legitimacy. Like, oh, you're from Coffee Strong. Or then I would say, oh yeah, I founded Coffee Strong. They'd be like, oh, you're one of the founders of Coffee Strong. It would be actually, they'd be more into what I was saying. So I think that kind of the work we've been doing with helping soldiers through the 4 years we've been in existence has actually kind of endeared us.
Shifted.
Yeah, it's very much shifted the way soldiers view us. So when I was talking to lower enlisted soldiers, I had literally no negative comments towards Coffee Strong, which could have been a couple of things. It could have been maybe, you know, they were actually really impressed with Coffee Strong's work and were just excited to meet someone from Coffee Strong, or maybe, you know, they heard about the infamous Coffee Strong, and like to actually meet someone from there, they were like, wow, this is really, really interesting. Or maybe they had negative views, and maybe talking to someone from Coffee Strong maybe kind of changed the way they viewed what we do at the shop. Or maybe they had negative views and just didn't say anything to my face when I was there. That's always possible as well. You know, it was actually really good. And we kind of realized doing this outreach that a lot of people have no idea what Iraq Veterans Against the War is on Fort Lewis, but they know what Coffee Strong is. So I think a lot of the work that we've been doing in this area has actually kind of built us up a name on base that is mostly positive, and especially among lower enlisted soldiers, not so much against higher ranking soldiers who will probably say, like all kinds of horrible stuff about us. But
Now, you would wander onto the base with an enlisted person
Sometimes,
there.
yes.
Sometimes, and
Yeah.
other times you just get on and.
I have a base pass.
Where all would you go?
We would go to Madigan. We would go to the PX. We'd go to Kubo Medical Center. We'd go to the Shopettes. We'd go to kind of all over the base. Wherever we thought there was groups of soldiers that we could talk to and not be harassed by people in Fort Lewis, we would go there. We spent a lot of time at the Warrior Transition Unit and things like that. So there was a lot of different places we would go. And, I think we generally didn't have many issues with getting thrown off base or anything like that. Like one group got kicked out of Madigan once. But we generally try to stay under the radar, not wear stuff that was like, said like Coffee Strong on it. Or
Let's do something. Let's role play.
Okay.
I'm a E4
Okay.
specialist.
Okay.
And I'm at the PX, the Post Exchange, for those that wonder what PX
Okay.
is. And I'm just coming out, have maybe a sack of whatever I bought there, and up you come. So let's role play of,
Okay.
how
I'm
are
a little
you
rusty,
approaching
so
me?
let's try this. Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Josh.
Hi,
I'm
Josh.
from Operation Recovery. So do you know
Operation
Operation Recovery? Yeah,
Okay.
it's basically right now. Me and my friends, we're out here talking to soldiers, trying to see see if they have any issues with their medical treatment or know anybody who has. Because we keep hearing stories about soldiers being redeployed to Iraq or Afghanistan with untreated medical issues.
Yeah, my unit is just ready to get redeployed to Afghanistan.
Oh, is anyone being redeployed from a unit that still has like medical issues from like a past
yeah,
deployment?
yeah. I mean, I even have some issues there
Oh.
too, because this would be my second time being redeployed.
So what are your issues?
Well, I have some concerns about. I know I have PTSD. I mean,
Okay.
they've even given me some meds or so, but I have to be careful because every time I take them, I don't show up for formation on time, and then I'm threatened with Article 15s, and I'm not too sure, if I can make a career of this if, I don't get some help. But I'm a little worried about this redeployment.
Do you think that's okay? Like your treatment?
Just checking to see if there's others that might be listening, but no, I'm really bothered that I just don't think it's okay.
Okay. Well, one of the things that we're doing out here is we're basically trying to get stories from soldiers and basically that are kind of dealing with similar situations to you. And we're trying to get soldiers to kind of stand together and actually stand up for their rights to heal.
And how would a person go about doing that? I mean, we've always been told, yes, sir, no, sir, and, we've just been trained to respond.
Well, that's the thing. Right now, there's a lot of mistreatment of soldiers on Fort Lewis, but people outside of Fort Lewis have no idea what's going on here or what goes on in the military. So if we have more stories of individual soldiers or things like that, if people outside of Fort Lewis became more aware of what was going on here, the way basically soldiers are being treated, people outside of here would be outraged. And if we get enough soldiers to basically stand up for their grievances, we can actually make change on Fort Lewis.
So does a person have to use their full name and everything, or can they be
No,
anonymous?
it can be totally anonymous and confidential.
Okay.
But one of the things that we have done is we've done similar work to this on Fort Hood.
Yes,
and
I know
basically,
about Fort Hood.
Yeah, and we force them to change policies. Like right now, they have like MedSend 1 and Surge 1. It basically make sure that doctors' orders can't be treated as recommendations.
You mean a commanding officer can't override a medical officer's decision?
No, not on Fort Hood right now.
Boy, that's news here.
Yeah. Well, see, sometimes here people tell you that they can't, but on Fort Lewis, there's actually no policy that says that your commander can't just override your medical diagnosis. So say, your captain, Captain Dumbass, says that basically, you don't have a shoulder injury. You're just lingering. I think you're good to go on this rough march tomorrow. Mm-hmm. He can just do that. He's not a medical doctor. He's never been to medical school, but he can do that sort of thing. So right now on Fort Hood, they can't do those kind of things to soldiers. So right now, that's what we're trying to do here.
I know I'm even being worried a little about being deployed with people who are worse off than I am, and they're supposedly covering my back, and man, I don't even want to see them around a weapon.
Exactly. And do you think those soldiers are effective at war?
Oh my, yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's the thing. So there's a lot of issues, and if you want to talk, I can give you my number. We can meet up sometime.
Oh, I appreciate it. You said you're from Coffee Strong.
Yeah, I'm from Coffee Strong.
Yeah. Oh, and I see you have a document, something about a pledge. What's this thing about a pledge?
So basically we're having people sign a pledge. It's not so much of a pledge, it's more of like we're trying to get your contact information so that we can contact you later about basically kind of when we're meeting and talking about the campaign, or when we're coming up with basically kind of next steps for what we want to do. Basically a way to kind of keep you informed and get you involved in what we're doing. Because the thing for us is that we want to make changes on Fort Lewis, but we want to make the changes that soldiers think we need to make on Fort Lewis. So instead of it being like, I think we need to change this, we want this campaign to be centered on what you think needs to be changed.
Okay. Well, I'd like to fill that out, so I'd be glad to do that.
Awesome, here you go.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate you being here.
No problem.
Well, that was an example of what Josh would do, but not bad, because that gives us and our viewing audience an idea of just how you would approach people and confrontation, if you will. Although it sounds like there is very little confrontation. Did you also have door-to-door type of a thing?
Yeah,
I know that was part of the plan.
So we did, for fundraising beforehand, we would go door-to-door and explain what we were doing. So we went door-to-door in Tacoma and kind of practiced talking at random. In a way, some was good because it wasn't so much about fundraising, but it was also getting us used to talking to random people.
The stranger.
Yeah. Like for me, like I talk a lot. So,
well, we're both teachers, so it's pretty easy. We get paid to talk.
Yeah, I talk all the time. So for me, I'm very talkative, so I'm good at talking to people, but generally, I struggle to randomly approach people I don't know. So for me, that was even good just to get used to talking to people I didn't know. So we did that for a little while. So some of it was good fundraising, some of it was also just good practice for this outreach drive that we were going to do later on. So by the time we actually went out and did outreach on Fort Lewis, we already had some practice at talking to soldiers. I mean, talking to
Now, how long did this outreach on the post last?
It lasted about a month.
About a month?
Yeah. So basically, we did it for a month, and basically the way we did it is we basically, did it in a way that we could basically pay a couple of individuals to almost do this work full time. Do it 40 hours a week, and basically, go out for a couple hours a day talking to soldiers, go do meetings later in the evening, and try to basically kind of bring them into the fold of what Coffee Strong's doing, what Operation Recovery is about. And we met a lot of amazing soldiers, got a lot of really good stories, and I think we got a few people that I think are going to be involved in the organization for a while. But the thing is that kind of when you do this work is that you're casting a really wide net, and hopefully you're just hoping to catch a few people. Sometimes you can talk to 100 people, and maybe 2 of those people will be people that are going to be really involved. But that's what you have to do. Honestly, that's how movement building works. Is you have to talk to tons of people and actually try to reach out. And sometimes it's mostly some people sign your pledge but not really be interested. But some people sign the pledge and be really interested and really want to get involved.
Now, tragically, some of these people have already in that redeployment process that you might have even talked to.
Yeah.
Or did you come across people that said their group is going to deploy?
Yeah, we came around a lot of people. Some people who were either getting redeployed. Pretty soon we approached them, and other things like that. And Fort Lewis right now, it's one of the most deployed bases in the country. So, when you go on base, you're always meeting soldiers who are getting redeployed really soon, and you're always coming into contact with people who don't want to be redeployed but are being redeployed. And for various reasons.
Now, there also was a group that their focus was you don't have to go.
Yeah. March forward.
March forward type of thing. But their focus was a little different than what yours was.
Yeah. It was very similar. I actually participated in that as well. And they're very different ideas. The thing about the Operation Recovery thing is that I think some people in IVAW would kind of feel that it's very reformist, because we don't just want traumatized soldiers not to go back to war. We don't want any soldiers to go to war. We don't want to throw any more soldiers into the meat grinder, have any more troops come back with PTSD. We'd rather just not do it at all, because basically, soldiers are overwhelmingly members of the working class. They're going to go get deployed basically just so they can fill a space, maybe kill other poor people overseas and make money for rich people here. we don't want that to happen, and it's a waste of our generation's blood and effort. So with March Forward was very explicit with their demands. They basically said that soldiers have a right not to go to Afghanistan. Basically, you have a choice when you want to be redeployed. And as someone who also resisted a deployment, I went to Iraq once, but I refused to go for a second time. It's something I could relate to, because I think sometimes soldiers have to kind of think about what they're participating in and if it's what they really want to do. I mean, when I was told I was going to get to Iraq for a second time, I kind of realized at that point that I just couldn't do it. I couldn't look at myself in the mirror and be proud of what I was doing. And the thing is, I really wanted to believe in the war. And my life would have been so much easier if I could convince myself to go back, but I just couldn't do it, And I think a lot of other soldiers on base feel similar, but they don't know what they can do. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes what's really interesting is that sometimes we would do this work for Operation Recovery, and we would meet conscious objectors or people who are already very anti-war. And for them, this is almost like they were down with this, but they're already past that. You know what I mean? They're past deployment of troops. They already wanted to end the war. They already wanted to be anti-war activists. So I think this really explicitly reached out to those soldiers. And also kind of I think sometimes soldiers have no idea that there are other anti-war soldiers out there. They don't know that there's soldiers who have resisted. But this was very in your face, holding a huge banner on a bridge. They went on base and talked to soldiers, put up stickers as well. I wasn't involved in that one as much because I substitute teach, so I worked in the day. But
Sure.
But still, I was out there a little bit on my own time.
No, there was another type of a focus too, which was tabling at community events.
Yeah.
What type of events did this Operation Recovery go to?
So we tabled at Operation Recovery tabled at all kinds of different events. Basically anything that people would invite us to. I know there's people tabling with Veterans for Peace at the Puyallup Fair to anti-war events, doing outreach there. I mean, even the Olympia's Farmers Market, all kinds of different things. And I think the tabling was okay. And it's kind of sometimes you invite people to come to you, but sometimes I think it's easier just to walk up and approach people. I think sometimes as activists, sometimes we kind of do this kind of lazy activism. We kind of wait for people to kind of come to us instead of trying to go to people. So, sometimes it works because sometimes in a place like Olympia, people will just kind of come to you. But sometimes when you're other places, you kind of have to you have to actually go out to them to get them involved.
Well, you had some informal gatherings like barbecues, concerts, other type of things, did you not?
We had barbecues kind of amongst ourselves, kind of talk about strategy and kind of talk about what we can do next, the next time we went out. The thing about the outreach drive we did on Fort Lewis that by the time it ended was when we were just finally getting really good at it, because I think that once we started it, when we first started this, no one we had heard about what Fort Hood people have done, and I even went to Fort Hood for a little bit, but we never actually did it ourselves. It was good to go on to Fort Hood, and then we also had other IVAW members kind of come to Fort Lewis JBLM for a little while, and even work on the outreach drive with us. And some of those people had done the exact same thing already at Fort Hood.
You also had concerts and things going on at Coffee Strong. Was this a place where you would invite the veterans or the active duty people to come to Coffee Strong and talk with them at any time?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We had concerts during. I don't think we actually had concerts during the outreach drive. We've had concerts during the past, and those are usually really good opportunities to talk to people. I mean, for me, music's always been really an integral part of anti-war work and even just radical politics. So sometimes for me, it's really easy for me to. I always just think of inviting people to come to shows or whatever, and also for me, it's easy for me because I always tell people the work I do with Coffee Strong and my belief in radical politics isn't just something I do during the day. It kind of transcends all aspects of my life. I do work with Coffee Strong, and then I go see a show full of bands who, basically, want to basically smash imperialism and capitalism and kind of start a more egalitarian society and advocate that, So to me, it's kind of just a part of my daily upbringing. And I think other people, especially some people involved in this movement, I mean, whether it's punk, hardcore, folk music, or whatever, I think they have very similar experiences. That basically, sometimes the stuff they do for fun when they're not doing this work is sometimes very directly related to what they're doing.
Now, a real graphic presentation that I know I've seen at Coffee Strong is the Just Seeds War is Trauma portfolio. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Just Seeds Collective, they're basically a group of artists and veterans, and they basically came up with a lot of really interesting prints that they did. And, we use them for art shows. Some of the stuff is still hanging up at Coffee Strong. I think some of the stuff we might even still have for sale. I'm not sure on that. But,
well, matter of fact, as we talk, our viewing audience will see some of those really great graphics.
Yeah, some of it's really good. Some of it's really hits home. I think one of my favorites, something I was talking about earlier, is but basically, people coming back from the war with PTSD, who basically aren't really crazy for being, thinking war was a horrible experience or horrendous. They're just, everyone else is crazy for basically thinking that it's okay. So there's some really good stuff. It's really well done. And, I wish I knew more about the people who were involved in making it, but...
Well, I think my favorite one is a brain in the shape of a grenade saying war is trauma.
Yeah, very blunt. I like this one that says, it says, war is horrible for human beings and other animals, talking about basically kind of like war's impact on the environment. Because I don't know if you know this, but, a lot of these wars we wage for oil and stuff like that. And basically, the organization that uses more oil and gasoline than any organization on Earth is the U.S. military.
Yes.
So basically, we fight wars for oil to basically fuel the U.S. military. It's really interesting how that works.
Now, one of the things that you were educating the troops is that there is an appeal for redress. What is that talking about? Because that might be something brand new for our viewing audience.
The appeal for redress is something that we were kind of working on during the campaign, and we're trying to basically make it more of a national thing, which was kind of, soldiers have one way of basically voicing complaints in the military, because technically soldiers aren't allowed to be in unions, and the stuff that we're advocating, a lot of soldiers actually can't, soldiers basically aren't supposed to stand up together for the rights, take collective actions. But, there's a million workplaces in this country. Walmart workers are now on strike. Mm-hmm. They're not in a union, and they're not supposed to be taking collective action, but they're still doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. We think soldiers, should do the same thing, too. Sometimes you have to do stuff that is illegal just because it's the right thing to do, just because sometimes legal things are the wrong thing to do. But soldiers can basically, sign an appeal for redress, basically acknowledging that this problem exists and they think that it should change. And that's kind of something they were trying to get soldiers to do. So we kind of started doing that, and I think the organization's gonna keep doing that. We're gonna see where that goes. I think we're trying to change the wording a little bit. Hopefully, we have to hit people up that signed it before and have them resend a new one. But if we can show the military that there's thousands of soldiers who basically feel this way, I think we can actually kind of prove that this is a valid concern that should be changed. And already, I think you're starting to see, even aides for congressmen have come into Coffee Strong and have talked to us about these issues. And even they've acknowledged that this is a problem, the way soldiers are being treated in the military and deploying soldiers with PTSD. Unfortunately, they're putting language in military bills that would actually kind of serve our purposes and basically kind of help end this deployment of traumatized troops. Unfortunately, it's putting stuff in the National Defense Authorization Act, which has all kinds of other great things, such as indefinite detention of Americans, basically increasing or decreasing civil liberties for Americans. So all these other horrendous things. But I don't know. I don't know if it's really a victory or not. Basically they're not going to deploy soldiers, but at the same time, they're not. This language isn't basically being used to end U.S. imperialism. It's basically putting the same bills that are basically to perpetuate it, even bring, the experience of war even closer to people here who haven't experienced it.
There is a sign out on I-5 as you drive by, and that's the Coffee Strong
Yeah.
sign there. And I know that that has helped bring some identification that there is a coffee shop nearby there. When people come by, and you're a volunteer barista, matter of fact, everyone volunteers there, how do you approach the people coming in to discern what their issues are? I know you have this wonderful plan that if I'm a GI or show an ID, I get free coffee.
Yeah.
But beyond getting a free cup, how do you engage or learn more about what their needs are?
Well, sometimes what happens is there's also this like kind of thing when you walk in is sometimes soldiers will get a free cup of coffee. You can ask them how they're doing. Some soldiers come in, they might not ask for help. They kind of came in because they were kind of looking for help, even subconsciously. And sometimes you just have to kind of filter that out when talking to them. Sometimes, just ask them how they're doing. Sometimes they've never been to Coffee Strong before, so you can explain what Coffee Strong does, explain GI rights counseling to them, like what that actually means. Because sometimes if people see GI rights counseling, I think that they're talking about like psychological counseling, when actually we're talking about, GI rights, like basically the rights you have as a soldier, not to basically be like screwed over by your chain of command. So basically that's, we talk to them about that and usually kind of bring them in. And honestly, like I never, like even at this shop, people say, do you ever get like hassled? But I'm there, I never have any problems. Like no one ever comes in and like is rude to me. Generally, I always feel like people who don't like us don't come in. Most of the time I just hang out with people.
Well, the unique thing about Coffee Strong, and they do not hide it, they say we are pro-soldier, but anti-war.
Yeah.
And I think that is a refreshing thing. It's one of the only ones in a very, very long geographical area. And you mentioned Fort Hood was another one, and there used to be others on the East Coast.
Yeah, there's one in Germany now too called the Clearing Barrel. There's another GI coffee house in Germany. So there's a couple, and there's been there used to be one at Fort Drum and one near Fort Bragg and in Norfolk, that area. But these coffee shops, their work, it requires a lot of money. It's hard to keep alive. I think Coffee Strong even struggles with basically having enough money to kind of exist month to month. And also, sometimes you need to pay someone to actually work this to kind of make sure that things are kind of going steadily. And also, so it requires money. We also need volunteers to staff the place. So these projects are great. You know what I mean? These coffee houses are great, but the thing is they require a lot.
A lot of resources.
And a lot of time these coffee houses aren't in bases that are like bastions of like progressive thought. You know what I mean? Or like radical thinking. Like these are usually, you're talking about like Fort Hood. You know what I mean? That's like Killeen, Texas. Like this isn't a bastion of like progressive values. Just saying. So, but people are still there doing the work that needs to be done. Even us, located in Lakewood, we're in the Northwest, but Lakewood's very different from the rest of Washington. It's very much, it's definitely a more conservative area. So, but we're still out there doing the work that we do, because I think sometimes it's really important for activists or people who want to make change to kind of get out of like their safe, activist ghettos and actually go places where people haven't heard the good word and actually kind of like spread it to them. So that's kind of what we're trying to do.
You've spread this word for about 30 days on post.
Yeah.
What are you going to do with all this?
I think that's something we're trying to discuss too, because we're kind of at Coffee Strong and Iraq Veterans Against the War, and sometimes I kind of use them interchangeably because I'm involved in both organizations, is kind of like what are our next steps to do. And I think sometimes one of the things we thought that a lot of the stuff that Operation Recovery is advocating for is stuff that Coffee Strong already does. So plugging soldiers in with the work that we do. And I think even after Operation Recovery, we still want to go onto base and still talk to soldiers and tell them about our concerns. I think that going onto base, talking to soldiers in their own environment is something that's really worthwhile and something that I think that we can keep doing and we should keep doing. And also, I want to keep the people on Fort Lewis, the commanders there in GBLM, on their toes. I kind of want, I don't mind that they don't like us. I actually welcome it. because I want them to be slightly threatened by the work that we're doing. Because we are very much against the status quo, and we do want to make changes. And I think that I always tell people one of the strengths of Coffee Strong is that we're just a tiny coffee house, right? But when something goes bad on Fort Lewis, we shine a giant magnifying glass on it. We get tons of media attention. We can basically point out the issues that's on JBLM. Like JBLM is called the most troubled base in the United States. It has issues, no doubt. But does it have any more issues than other bases do? Maybe not. But the thing is that it has Coffee Strong there with a giant magnifying glass. When things go wrong on Fort Lewis or JBLM, the media comes to Coffee Strong.
I've noticed that.
Yes, and we talk to them because the Fort Lewis don't want to talk to them. So they hate the fact that we've become kind of the unofficial spokesman for their base, And the thing is that we will do it, and we'll keep doing this. And the thing is, first of all, we're smarter, we're more intelligent, and we have we have better things to say. They can't defend their atrocities or their shitty treatment of soldiers. So they're not going to bother trying to defend their actions. So we'll keep attacking them and keep them on the fence. And the thing is that, and they realize this. So.
And they can't go on to post very easily as a news organization.
No, they can't. So basically, yeah, we're going to be a thorn in JBLM's side for a long time, hopefully. And I definitely want them to be on guard and on edge. And at the same time, I think when they mistreat soldiers on Fort Lewis, or they basically, if you're basically telling a soldier you can't get psychological help, if you're basically trying to suppress some sexual assault that's happening against a female soldier, if you're trying to deploy troops who are conscientious objectors, you have to basically think of like the Coffee Strong boogeyman behind you that could basically shine a light on what you're doing. So the fact is that anything that they do that's messed up, they have to basically wonder what will happen if Coffee Strong gets wind of this.
Well, and I know when you walk in, there's a ton of resources that people can pick up. I mean, just sheet after sheet after sheet, and a very liberal book policy that they can pick up and
Totally.
read.
There's even books that I don't even like, but they're still there. I even disagree with. But yeah, so we have all kinds of books there. So we try to focus on a lot of political stuff that may be hard for soldiers to get, but there's also just like random fiction books that are good. So
well, the one thing that I appreciate is you tell the people, here are the resources and here are some of the consequences that you may face, but the ultimate decision is up to you. It's not ours. And we're not telling you what you need to do. We're saying if you do this, here's what's likely to happen. And I think that's a very safe place to be because they're getting the information that they otherwise would not get.
Yeah. Definitely coming to Coffee Strong from Fort Lewis is definitely a different world, I think. But a lot of times, I think it's really good for soldiers because I think it's a place where soldiers who do have anti-war views can kind of feel like they're definitely not alone, and also be exposed to other things. I mean, I always think if I was on Fort Lewis, when I was a soldier, because there was no Coffee Strong when I was stationed in Fort Lewis, how great it would have been if I would have discovered Coffee Strong, and how much that would have meant to me. So basically, I'm always trying to find, with the work we do at Coffee Strong, I'm always trying to find the soldiers who are similar to me when I was in the military and reach out to them and get them involved in our work.
No, I was stationed at Fort Lewis, but that was way back when.
Yeah.
And there was a coffee house, and it was called the Shelter Half.
Yeah.
But they also made that off limits
Yeah.
to us, except Shelter Half sued and
Yeah.
won, and people could go and get the information. And so Coffee Strong has quite a mission and an outreach there. When you were on Fort, did you come across people that you could tell were, for lack of a better word, damaged goods?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, when you're on base, when you're on base, or even if you're at Coffee Strong, you meet people who, when they come in, obviously have psychological issues, and issues that are even way beyond the issues that I've seen or I've dealt with myself personally, and it's really shocking. Because sometimes you'll meet people and you'll think like, this person's still in the military, this person's like.
How could they possibly?
There's like no red flags going up when this guy starts talking to people. Like no one like. And it's one of those things. It's like nothing against individual soldiers, but sometimes you'll talk to soldiers who are literally like out of their minds, who have serious psychological issues that are obvious to anyone. You don't have to have a psychological degree to notice this. yet they're still serving in the military.
And shouldn't be around a weapon.
No, they shouldn't be around weapons. You know what I mean? And think about this, though, this kind of goes back to the root cause, is that the military isn't really concerned with winning the wars in Afghanistan, winning the war in Afghanistan. Because first off, when I do social justice work, and even anything that's slightly revolutionary, I don't believe in forcing people to help me do to do the work I want to do. When I was involved in port militarization in Olympia, I didn't believe in dragging people into the streets with me to block military shipments. That would just be completely ineffective. You know what I mean? I wouldn't want to force people against their will to help me do the work that I want to do. To the military, that's just every day. They're all about forcing people to work and do things that are against their will. The thing is that makes their organization weaker. You know what I mean? Because basically they have to force people to do work they don't want to do. And when it comes to basically these people's psychological issues, they'll send them to combat because right now it doesn't really matter if they win the war in Afghanistan or not. They just want to perpetuate it. Basically to send someone to fill that role. Because first of all, in Afghanistan, you can't win an occupation. You either stay there forever or you leave. So basically winning isn't really a high priority anyway. And also it's impossible to win in Afghanistan, as the U.S. has found out already, after 2,000 lives lost and Lord knows how many Afghanis have been killed. But so there's just that. So winning the war isn't one of their concerns. It's basically just a guy. He's just checking the box. Here's a guy, deploy him. He has psychological issues. Who cares? He's filling a role.
Well, what I've been amazed is if they damage a Stryker unit, what does the Department of Defense do? They repair it, or they take it out of service.
Yeah.
But an individual,
Yeah.
they'll deploy them.
Totally. Well, it's because sometimes the wounds of psychological wounds are less obvious to people. I think that's the main reason why. But this is the kind of thing about the military. Is basically it's very symptomatic of anything under capitalism. Basically whether it's workers or whether it's soldiers, you use them up as long as they're worthwhile and they can work for you. But pretty much when they're not useful anymore, you kind of just discard them.
Well, when we started our program, Josh, I gave some very conservative statistics on PTSD and also mild traumatic brain injury.
There's also one thing I was going to add too, just really quickly, that you didn't mention. One of the things that's happened recently, Fort Lewis has a really high suicide rate.
Yes.
And one of the things about the suicide rate in Fort Lewis is almost half of the soldiers who killed themselves on Fort Lewis have actually never been deployed, which is really interesting because this says that not only deployments are traumatizing, but just life in the military in itself is traumatizing. And I think that's a really damning critique of militarization, is that basically just being in the military itself, not even being in war, is stressful, makes people feel hopeless, makes people feel like they have no way out, and to the point where they'll actually kill themselves.
And there were 11 documented, at least 11, in 2011.
Yeah.
And I know there's been more in 2012, but what we hear now is a person's death is under investigation.
Yeah.
And that doesn't get out to the public as much, except those of us who say, we think we know.
Coffee Strong has pointed out to reporters that numerous times when we've heard of deaths under suspicious circumstances. Sometimes the thing about, I think Fort Lewis doesn't realize is that we have soldiers on base who will tell us when they know someone who's killed themselves. So they can say that it's under investigation, but we might know someone in that unit who can tell us that was a suicide. And we've reported this to the Tacoma News Tribune and things like that, who've actually called Fort Lewis out and on their BS. So people in this area aren't stupid.
And I've even had a commanding officer tell me, we have a death under investigation, and you and I both know what it is, but we're not at liberty to say until we have the full investigation completed. Unfortunately, we know that PTSD is one of those issues when it becomes so hopeless that the only thing that seems favorable for them is to commit suicide.
Yeah.
And as an accredited VA claims agent, I also deal with not only soldiers that are dealing with PTSD, but also the dependents that are now left pretty much adrift because they say that was negligence or whatever the case might be, unless they can prove that the person who committed suicide had issues with PTSD.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, we're getting towards the end of our time together, and I'm wondering if you have any closing thoughts that you would like to share on Operation Recovery that we would encourage our viewing audience to know more about.
I'm trying to think. The last things I want to say, kind of what you kind of just said. I think we talked about dependence. That's like one of the saddest things for me when I was in Iraq was hearing about people either killed in combat, people who kill themselves, who leave behind families, who leave behind newborn children who will never see their parents. I think if anyone hears any stories like that, I think it's truly heart-wrenching and something that really motivates me to keep doing this work. And also, kind of when it comes to Operation Recovery and even suicides, because one of my main goals is to put the fear of God into Joint Base Lewis-McChord. But we also get lots of random calls from soldiers on JBLM too. So we have a lot of sympathetic soldiers on Joint Base Lewis-McChord that I don't even know, who basically will call us and tell us what's going on, and later we found out to be true. So.
Well, and this program that we have tonight will be shown on local cable access 22 here in Thurston County, but then we put this program out on the internet afterwards so that those that are at Joint Base Lewis-McChord, as well as the other military bases all over the world, can hear about these type of things and can reach out.
Also, if you are a soldier in the military right now and you do see things that are going on your base, in your unit that are messed up, feel free to actually call Coffee Strong and contact us, drop us an email somehow, and let us know what's going on, because I think sometimes there's issues that happen in people's units that no one knows about, that never get reported, that often get ignored. And if we can learn about these issues and talk to people who are involved, we can actually shine a magnifying glass on these actions, hopefully end them. Because the thing is, no one in the world wants to see soldiers mistreated. Soldiers are almost revered to this godlike status, and I think that a lot of people join the military for good reasons. They don't join the military so they can be, abused, sent to war for false pretenses, to be sexually assaulted, So when these things happen, we want to know, and we want to hopefully end these practices from happening in the future.
Well, Josh, I want to thank you for sharing with us, and want to encourage our viewing audience to respond to Coffee Strong. And the credits for Coffee Strong are on your viewing screen now, and you can be in touch with them, or if you happen to know a soldier who is experiencing PTSD or about to be redeployed, to be in contact with Coffee Strong, and they can offer some resources that they might otherwise not have.
Or stop in.
Or stop in, yes.
Stop in. I'm usually on Sunday.
There you are.
So,
Thank you for watching.
Soldiers, speak out. We can tell the truth of what we've seen. We are not liars. Soldiers, speak out. We have a duty to all children and to their future.